Hey guys, what's up? It is Ripe again, back with more revenge stories. If you haven't already, please don't forget to check out my Patreon at patreon.com/ripeyoutube for exclusive Reddit content. Without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. And the first one is titled, "Nobody is taking your crap anymore, we all quit." I was reading about some people how they quit their job on the spot and the company went under. This is when I was part of a mass walk-off. This happened in the late 90s when I worked for a concrete company. We were the ones pouring foundations, footings, floors, etc. It was long hours, but the pay was good. Most of the guys on the crews were awesome people with a great work ethic. We also had some that were slower but not too slow to impede the job. Well, boss man was a micromanaging, interfering, loud, I don't think I ever heard him when he wasn't yelling, and did not think anything about grabbing a worker to yell in his face. 1 week before the walkout, we were working on a foundation for a kiln at a sawmill. There wasn't enough people in all the crews to do the job, so he hired some locals to work until the job was finished and paid the same as us. We did not care. More hands, more work done, and them getting paid the same as us, as we considered they were lucky. No hard feelings and seemed to get along with all the new guys. One of the new guys was not shown how to do a certain task and thought, who better to show me than boss man? So he walked over and asked to be shown. That is when all hell broke loose. Not sure if boss man was already in a bad mood or if this caused it, but within a second of asking, boss man had the guy by the throat against a wall and slapped him so hard he fell over the safety fence and had a 4-foot fall to the concrete floor. Boss man just walked off the job site and drove away. This was at a time when cell phones were not very common and none of us had one, but the two-way radio in the truck had an emergency channel. The foreman radioed for an ambulance and police. The foreman went in the ambulance with the worker and filled out his police report at the hospital. Luckily for the worker, he ended up with just bruising and nothing broken. Since the foreman was the second in charge, he had all of our home numbers and gave each of us a personal call to let us know the hospital report and to ask us to get together for a group chat. All of us showed up. Except one, the guy who got hurt. We passed it off, he was too sore and thought no more on it, not only because it was at a pub and the first round was free, but to find out what everyone's thoughts were. Other than the new guys, we are all happy enough to just walk away like Bossman did and let him suffer the consequences of breach of contract with the sawmill. They just wanted the money. This is when our except one limped in. He told us he just came from home after talking to the officer in charge of the case and said Bossman just was arrested for assault causing bodily harm. Or something of that sort, I cannot remember right off. That settled it with the locals. They were all charging him with breach of contract since he hired them to complete this job and now they cannot. The next day we were all at the job site and when Bossman showed up we each walked up to him and said directly in his face, "I quit," and then went to our vehicles and drove away in parade fashion. He ended up with such big fines through his company for breach of contract at the sawmill that took up everything he had saved and he had to sell off equipment to make ends meet. Then came the 6 or so temporary employees with their claims. The court sided with all of them and he was made to pay out each contract in full. That broke him and he had to let the bank take almost everything. I don't know why, but his wife stuck with him even though she admits he got his just dessert. She comes from a family of money, so even if he is broke, she is not. Even more fallout, remember that guy he threw over the fence? Yeah, he won his case too, and Bossman had to spend close to 5 months in county jail, a huge fine he couldn't pay, 1 year anger management courses and volunteer at the local food bank. If there was more, I cannot think of it right now. In the end, his in-laws loaned him the money to start up again and for the last 10 years has been doing good for himself and is actually a great man to work for. I like to think that his entire workforce walking out one by one had something to do with it. I hope this fits as revenge. And guys, I'm wondering, did you ever quit your job because your boss was so awful like the one in the story? Let us know if you have ever done that. And by the way, if you have watched until here, I would really appreciate it if you could like the video if you enjoy the content. Thank you so much in advance. And the next one is titled Brutal Bus Driver Busted. After reading a user's post a couple of days ago below about hair pulling, it reminded me of something that happened way back in 1970 when I was in the first grade. First grade was the year I started taking the bus to school, and I had to walk several houses to the bus stop where several kids would meet up and catch the bus to school. On the first day my mom accompanied me until I got on the bus, waved goodbye as I boarded and found a seat. As soon as the bus got out of sight, the bus driver stopped the bus and proceeded to walk down the aisle, looking at each new kid with a scowl until he got to me. Since it was the 70s and being the in fad, I had longer than usual hair for a boy, just past my ears, wavy down to my collar. I was the perfect target for the bus driver, who proceeded to grab my hair and literally pick me off the seat by it, and then proceeded to hit me on the side of my head with the back of his other very bony knuckled hand until I screamed and then started crying because it hurt so much. He dumped me back in my seat and told all of the other kids on the bus that this would happen to them if we did not sit perfectly still and perfectly quiet until we got to school. Needless to say, we all sat that way in absolute terror because over the course of a month or so, the bus driver brutalized several kids that way for even the slightest infraction. Not knowing any better, I never said anything to my mom or dad, thinking this was standard practice with all bus drivers. One day, a new kid that had just moved into the neighborhood got on the bus, and the bus driver grabbed their hair and beat them with the back of his other hand simply because the kid was new and need to be taught his lesson about bus rules. In school at lunch, we, several of the kids that rode the same bus together, told him the bus driver's rules and explained the punishment in hopes the new kid wouldn't be any further brutalized by the bus driver. The next day the kid got on the bus and very quickly and quietly took his seat. The bus pulled out from the bus stop and went maybe 100 feet when the siren from a police car right behind the bus started wailing. The bus driver pulled over, and the biggest, most massively muscular police officer I have ever seen to this day walked up alongside the bus and stood by the door and looked intently at the front tire of the bus. This police officer could have easily played frisbee with a manhole cover if he wanted to, because he was so big. He then motioned to the bus driver to come out and take a look at the front tire, which the bus driver did. The officer looked at the bus driver and said, "Take a look at that tire and the lower lug nut. There's something wrong with it." The bus driver bent down to take a closer look, and the police officer grabbed the bus driver by the hair, lifted him with one arm completely off the ground, and proceeded to beat the driver with his billy club until the bus driver was screaming. The officer then dropped him in a heap on the ground and then continued hitting the bus driver until he was nearly unconscious and no longer fighting to defend himself. The police officer explained to the bus driver that if he even so much as touched another kid again for any reason, he would come back and do it again, but not stop until the bus driver had suffered severe brain damage. Every kid on the bus to a T cheered afterwards, and the new kid had a beaming smile from ear to ear on his face as he pointed at the police officer and said with great enthusiasm, "That is my dad." The bus driver slowly got up, got back on the bus, and drove us the rest of the way to school, bleeding from several places on his body and head, and never said a thing. We never saw that bus driver after that day. He must have quit immediately. This was one of the few great days out of the hell that was my elementary education, and one I will never forget. And the next one is the title story, and it is titled "Try to Prank Me? Good luck getting your camper back with a lot of cash." I think this qualifies as pro-revenge because it was not petty. This just happened, well, finalized yesterday. Anyone who follows me or read any of my posts knows something about my wife's best friend I will call Karen. A harpy from hell, she makes everyone, even my wife sometimes, miserable. She also thinks she is smarter than everyone and just stuck up enough to believe no one would dare cross her. So a friend of ours I will call Bill bought a piece of property next door to us. He had a bad car accident in November and lives an hour away. He made me a legal agent of the property, which means I have almost as much power as he does. Think property manager. It has a small house on it that is unoccupied, but I keep an eye on things. He bought the property only because next to the house is a big asphalt parking lot. It used to be a lot for a small used car company. His reasoning was that during bad winter months he could park equipment and trucks from his other companies there, so he also had me put up huge "no parking, violators will be towed at owner's expense" signs all around it. Moving on, so Sunday I am elbow deep into an RC submersible when my wife bursts into my study, yells for me to listen to something. I take the phone, and who is doing a live video? Karen. Karen was talking about how she was going away for a few days. This was Sunday morning because she was so stressed out from always giving people advice and helping them through their problems. And then she mentioned again why my wife told me. She talked about how she parked her 46-foot fifth wheel $35,000 camper next door to me, and seeing Bill was unreachable this week, I would have to look at it for the next 3 days as a reminder that she's not only smarter but 10 moves ahead of me, and I'm a dick because I wouldn't loan her a truck and it cost her money to rent one. Turns out she told her husband, who is gone during the week for work, that she had Bill's permission to put it there, so early Sunday morning he towed it over there. I was pissed. She has a tendency to lie, so I went outside and there it was. Parked right there in the middle of the lot was her camper. I actually smiled because I had a perfect plan. As being a manager of the property, I also had a right to have any vehicle towed off there, including that one. I had two options: call garage number 1, owned by a nice guy, doesn't charge the state maximum for the tow and storage fees, explain what happened and he might cut you a break. And then there is garage B. He doesn't care if he has to tow your car 15 feet, he is charging you the maximum and always charges the maximum storage fees. So you are damn right, I went with garage B. Called the guy, gave him my name, told him I managed the property and bring a fifth wheel. He had it gone in less than half an hour. This is the best part yet, my friends. I didn't tell her it was towed until yesterday morning. Yes, I waited from Sunday afternoon till Tuesday morning. Yesterday morning she is on Facebook live streaming from her car, talking about how she was going to visit her camper for another laugh. Then I got on live, my wife sent her a message to get on my live stream like now and post the link to my page. When she was viewing, I said this: "Hey Karen, hope you had a wonderful time. I have to tell you something. I had your camper towed. With me being the property's manager and Bill being unavailable, I had to have it towed. We cannot let people think they can just park on there illegally. XYZ Tow has the camper. I was going to call you Sunday, but you seemed so stressed out that I thought you deserved a break. I mean, the camper is safe, that is all that matters, right?" Well, Facebook lit up like a Christmas tree, as I had hoped those watching her stream followed because, well, they were curious too, and then the messages started. A few condemned me, but most were supportive. Some thought it was about time someone showed her that she wasn't all powerful and no one was scared of her, and then it went quiet. Now, a normal person might be pissed, but understandable, but she went the wounded Karen route. That afternoon, she got back on again. She was crying, fake crying, about how it was going to cost her over $2,000 in fees because her husband wouldn't be back till Friday to tow it back, and could someone please do it for her. A bonus I was hoping would happen, and that if she started a GoFundMe page, would people donate to help her pay the fees. The answers to that were between no and F no, but hey, she didn't threaten to sue me at least, right? Side note, Bill is unavailable this week except to certain people, which I am part of. I called him and told him the whole story. His answer was exactly, "Good. You wanna play games? Then be prepared to lose." The camper is still there, no one volunteered to get it, a few said they would for gas money, but she tried to play it off as it would be helping her and she owed so much in fees and that she would owe them a favor. A favor no one could collect on because she has nothing to bargain with. And Ripe Stars, I'm curious, how many of you own a camper? I noticed that there are a few people on YouTube who live the so-called RV life, meaning they tour around a country and make videos while doing so in a camper. I think it is mostly people from America, if I have seen that correctly, but it is interesting how many people are enjoying these videos. That's certainly not a lifestyle for me, but it is interesting nonetheless. And the next one is titled, How I Cost Ex-Area Manager Her Job. I have just been assigned online refresher training in preparation for reopening of the pub company I work for now that the virus lockdown is being relaxed. It's reminded me of my revenge a few years back, so I thought I would share. The training included sections on pest management and anti-bribery legislation. I used to be a pub manager, and due to the sale of the pub I managed, I chose to accept a new pub with my current company instead of tube to the new company. For the non-UK readers, I chose to move within the company instead of being sold with the site. It was a big mistake. I ended up in a problem pub with an awful micromanaging corrupt area manager who had it in for me. Many stories I could tell about how bad she was, from allowing food hygiene laws to be broken, taking bribes to make us stock certain brands, to having affairs with managers in her area and favoring them. Eventually it exacerbated a mental health issue I have, and I had a total mental breakdown. 4 months off sick, close to being sectioned and put in a facility against my will for my own safety. I was not the first of her managers that ended up off with MH issues due to her either. Eventually I took a voluntary demotion for the sake of my own health and to get out of her area. Best decision I've ever made. Money is not everything, and I'm in a much better place mentally now. Shortly after I started back at work, I heard she had left our company. Rumor was she was told to jump or be pushed. Scroll on a year or so and I was out with a friend having a catch up in another pub chain, and I saw her sitting down with someone going through paperwork at another table. It looked to me like she was having a meeting with the pub manager, so I asked one of the floor staff who she was, saying I thought I recognized her. They said she was the area manager having a meeting with the pub manager. My revenge. Knowing her, I guessed she was probably doing the same things with the new company she worked for, so I anonymously put in a whistleblower complaint to both the Food Standards Agency and also to her head office from a throwaway email. I basically made stuff up, assuming she was doing the stuff she had done when I worked for her, in other words, refusing to allow rent-to-kill call-outs for pest problems, to make her maintenance budget looks good, telling staff to refreeze unsold defrosted foods to save on stock loss, and taking bribes to stock products, as well as making managers clock staff out before they had finished to cut staff hours, etc. All stuff she had tried to make me do, and when I wouldn't, she had used her powers to F me over. She could not discipline me for not breaking the law, but she could screw with my bonus and put me through hell in other ways. The fallout: the pub was closed with a prohibition notice and not allowed to reopen until a multitude of faults were fixed. Unless an outlet is really usually, they will give out improvement notices and give the company 2 weeks to sort things out. A prohibition notice means it was really bad and dangerous. This hit the local press in a big way, and they did several follow-up stories on it with her name mentioned frequently as it went to court. Unfortunately, I cannot seem to find anything about the final outcome though. Here's hoping any future job she goes for Googles her name before employing her. Personally, I wish I could find that she was locked up or fined. And guys, unfortunately, we have already reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's stories, and if you haven't already, please also go to patreon.com/ripeyoutube, where I upload exclusive Reddit videos starting at just $3 a month. This is a great way to support me in case you are interested, and the chance for me to become independent from YouTube revenue. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe and like the video, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.